You know that feeling when you're sitting across from a salesperson at a dealership? They've just shown you numbers on a screen that somehow make a $35,000 vehicle sound affordable at $399 monthly, and you're trying to figure out if you're making a smart decision or walking into a financial trap you won't recognize until it's too late. Maybe you've convinced yourself that everyone has car payments, so this must be normal, must be how responsible adults handle transportation. Or perhaps you've spent hours researching online only to find that every article seems written by someone either selling you something or operating from financial circumstances completely different from yours. Here's what most advice about buying, leasing, or financing vehicles won't acknowledge. The question isn't really which option is mathematically optimal. The question is which option aligns with your actual financial situation, your behavioral patterns with money, and your honest assessment of how you'll use the vehicle. Understanding the real differences between these approaches, not just the surface level distinctions the dealer wants you to focus on, changes everything about how you make this decision. My name is Anderson, and I help people understand that major financial decisions require looking past the monthly payment amount to see the complete picture of what you're actually agreeing to. If you're trying to figure out the right way to acquire your next vehicle without sabotaging your financial future, stay with me through this. Subscribe if this kind of thorough financial analysis helps you make better decisions. Now, when people discuss vehicle acquisition, what typically drives the decision? Do you focus primarily on the monthly payment amount, trying to keep it under some threshold that feels manageable? Or do you get overwhelmed by all the options and just pick whatever the salesperson recommends because they seem confident and you feel confused? The reality is that most people make this decision backwards, and understanding why that happens reveals everything about why so many people end up financially trapped by their transportation choices. Because here's the contrarian truth that might initially surprise you. The average person will spend over $200,000 on vehicles throughout their lifetime. $200,000, that's enough to purchase property in many markets. Yet most people invest more time researching streaming service subscriptions than they do examining one of the largest financial decisions they'll repeatedly make. The automotive industry has perfected making every option sound appealing, while simultaneously making the mathematics so opaque that you need advanced financial training just to understand what you're actually agreeing to. They've got financing offers, lease deals, cash incentives, and hybrid arrangements that combine elements of multiple approaches. But here's what's actually happening behind the surface. Dealerships don't generate most of their profit from selling you the vehicle itself. They make substantial money from financing arrangements, insurance products, extended warranties, and add-on services that somehow multiply during your visit. Understanding this changes everything about how you should approach acquiring a vehicle. Let's start with the most straightforward option, which is paying cash up front. This means arriving at the dealership with the complete purchase price, transferring your money, and leaving without any monthly obligations, interest charges, or complicated contracts. Sounds simple, right? It is simple, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's always the optimal choice financially. When you purchase a vehicle with cash, you own it immediately. No monthly payments creating ongoing obligations, no interest accumulating, no restrictions on mileage or condition. You can modify it, drive it extensively, or let someone learn to operate it without worrying about violating contract terms. The downside is obvious. You're allocating a significant amount of capital to something that begins losing value the moment you take possession. Vehicles are depreciating assets, which means they're guaranteed to be worth less tomorrow than today. There's also what economists call opportunity cost to consider. If you spend $30,000 on a vehicle today, that's $30,000 that could have been invested in index funds, real estate, or retirement accounts. Over time, those alternative investments might generate returns that exceed whatever you'd pay in vehicle loan interest. The second option is traditional financing, which most people simply call getting a car loan. This functions like any other loan. You provide a down payment, borrow the remaining amount at a specific interest rate, and make monthly payments until the loan is satisfied. At the end of the term, you own the vehicle free and clear. The appeal of financing is that you don't need the entire purchase price available immediately. You can distribute the cost over several years, making it more manageable within your monthly budget. You still own the vehicle, so you maintain the same freedoms as paying cash, but you preserve liquidity for other investments or emergencies. The catch is interest. You'll pay more for the vehicle overall because you're borrowing money, and that privilege comes with a cost. Current vehicle loan interest rates vary dramatically depending on your credit profile, the vehicle's age, and the loan duration. Someone with excellent credit might secure a rate around 4 or 5%. Someone with poor credit could face rates in double digits. Here's where people often make a critical error. They focus entirely on the monthly payment instead of the total loan cost. A dealer might say they can reduce your payment to $400 monthly, but they're not highlighting that they've extended your loan to 7 years to achieve that number. You end up paying thousands more in interest, and you're still making payments long after the vehicle has lost most of its value and appeal. The third option is leasing, which is essentially renting a vehicle for a predetermined period. You make monthly payments for the right to operate the vehicle, but you don't own it. At the lease term's end, you return the vehicle to the dealership and either lease something else or explore other options. Leasing typically offers the lowest monthly payments because you're only paying for the portion of the vehicle's value that you'll consume during the lease period. If a vehicle is worth $30,000 new and will be worth $20,000 after 3 years, you're essentially paying for that $10,000 in depreciation plus fees and interest. This option appeals to people who want to operate newer vehicles with current technology and safety features. You're usually covered by the manufacturer's warranty for the entire lease period, so major repairs aren't your concern. When the lease ends, you simply return it without worrying about selling the vehicle or dealing with its declining value. But leasing comes with significant restrictions that can transform into expensive surprises. You're typically limited to a specific mileage per year, often 10 to 12,000 miles. Exceed that limit and you'll pay additional fees for every mile over. These charges accumulate quickly if you have a long commute or enjoy extended trips. You're also responsible for maintaining the vehicle in excellent condition. Normal wear is usually acceptable, but anything beyond that can result in charges when you return it. That small dent from a parking incident, the stain that won't completely disappear, or the tire wear beyond specified limits could cost you hundreds or thousands when you return the vehicle. Perhaps most significantly, leasing creates a cycle where you perpetually have a vehicle payment. When your lease ends, you either need to lease another vehicle or find alternative transportation. You never build any equity, and you don't have anything tangible to show for all those monthly payments except the experience of driving something that was never actually yours. The fourth and increasingly common option is what's sometimes called a personal contract purchase or balloon payment financing. This hybrid approach combines elements of both financing and leasing in ways designed to provide flexibility while keeping you connected to the dealership ecosystem. With this arrangement, you provide a down payment and the dealer establishes a guaranteed future value for the vehicle at the contract period's end. Your monthly payments are calculated based on the difference between the vehicle's current price and that future value, similar to leasing. However, at the contract's end, you have choices unavailable with traditional leasing. You can return the vehicle and walk away, just like leasing. You can make a final payment equal to the guaranteed future value and keep the vehicle. Or you can use any equity in the vehicle toward a down payment on your next purchase. This flexibility sounds attractive, but it comes at a cost. These arrangements often carry higher interest rates than traditional financing, and the guaranteed future value is typically set conservatively to protect the dealer's interests, not yours. The dealership loves these arrangements because they keep you in their ecosystem. When your contract ends, they'll be ready with a new deal prepared to roll your existing arrangement into something even more complex. It's like a financial subscription service where you never quite escape, and somehow the monthly cost keeps increasing each time you renew. Now, here's where things become genuinely interesting, and by interesting, I mean potentially financially damaging. Most people make their decision based solely on monthly payment amounts, which is exactly what the dealership wants. It's like choosing a mortgage based on how the payment sounds without considering whether you're buying a mansion or an overpriced shed. Let me walk you through some concrete numbers using a typical vehicle worth approximately $30,000. These calculations will probably make you question some assumptions about vehicle ownership, but understanding this could save you thousands. If you finance this vehicle with a 15% down payment, that's $4,500, and secure an interest rate around 6% for 5 years, your monthly payment would be approximately $470. Over the loan's life, you'd pay about $32,000 total. At the end, you own the vehicle outright and could potentially sell it for around $12,000, making your net cost approximately $20,000 for 5 years of ownership. Now let's examine leasing the same vehicle. With the same down payment, your monthly lease payment might be around $320. That sounds fantastic until you realize that after 3 years and approximately $16,000 in total payments, you have absolutely nothing to show for it except possibly stress-induced anxiety from worrying about mileage limits and condition requirements. The balloon payment option sits somewhere between using the same down payment and assuming the vehicle will be worth $14,000 at the end of 3 years. Your monthly payment would be around $400. If you return the vehicle, you've spent approximately $19,000 with nothing to show for it. If you decide to keep it by paying the final $14,000 balloon payment, your total cost reaches $33,000. Here's what's particularly revealing about these numbers. The balloon payment option, which dealers often promote as flexible and customer-friendly, actually costs you more than almost any other choice if you end up keeping the vehicle. And if you return it, you've spent more than you would have with a straightforward lease. But there's additional complexity to consider. The opportunity cost of allocating your money varies significantly between these options. If you purchase the vehicle outright for $30,000 cash, your net cost after selling it would be only $18,000, making it the cheapest option mathematically. But here's the consideration that financial planners emphasize. That $30,000 could have been invested elsewhere. If you had invested that money in something generating a 7% annual return, it would have grown to approximately $46,000 over 5 years. Even after paying the additional financing costs of the loan option, you might emerge ahead by keeping your cash invested rather than tied up in a depreciating asset. This is where your personal financial behavior becomes crucial. If you're someone who would actually invest that money rather than spend it on other things, then financing might make sense. If you're the type who would use that extra cash to fund other purchases, then paying cash for the vehicle is probably better for your overall financial discipline. The psychological factors are just as important as the mathematical ones, and they're often completely overlooked in these discussions. Some people genuinely experience less stress knowing they own their vehicle outright and don't have monthly payments creating ongoing obligations. Others prefer the flexibility of always operating something newer and letting someone else absorb major repair costs. If you're the type who maintains vehicles until they're barely functional, buying makes more sense. You can operate that vehicle for 10, 15, or even 20 years with proper maintenance. The longer you keep it, the better your annual cost becomes. On the other hand, if you're someone who becomes dissatisfied with vehicles after a few years and starts browsing dealer websites during lunch breaks, leasing might actually save you money compared to constantly trading vehicles and absorbing the depreciation impact each time. There are also practical considerations that don't appear in financial calculations but can significantly impact your experience. When you lease, you're typically operating a vehicle that's under warranty for the entire lease period. No unexpected repair expenses, No worrying about whether that unusual sound means major component failure. When you own a vehicle, especially as it ages, you become familiar with repair shops and their waiting areas. Those costs aren't predictable, and they tend to increase as vehicles age. A major repair bill can quickly eliminate any savings you thought you were gaining through ownership. Mileage restrictions on leases can be deal breakers for some people. If your daily commute is extensive or you enjoy spontaneous road trips, those excess mileage charges can accumulate faster than you anticipate. The standard lease allows approximately 10 to 12,000 miles annually, which sounds reasonable until you actually calculate your driving patterns. Factor in daily commuting, weekend activities, family visits, and annual vacation drives, and you might discover you're a higher mileage driver than you realized. Excess mileage charges typically range from 10 to 25 cents per mile, which might not sound substantial until you're facing a bill for several thousand when you return the vehicle. Then there's the condition requirements, which can turn lease returns into negotiations. The lease agreement defines normal wear, but those definitions can be surprisingly strict. A small dent, a stain, or tires worn beyond specified limits can all result in additional charges. Smart lessees budget for professional detailing and minor repairs before returning vehicles, but even then you're subject to the dealer's inspection standards. The modification restrictions on leases can also surprise people, especially those who view their vehicle as an extension of personal expression rather than just transportation. Want to tint windows darker than factory specifications? That's probably going to cost you at return. Thinking about adding accessories or equipment? Better verify your lease terms first, because modifications that seem perfectly reasonable might violate contract requirements. This brings us to a fundamental question most people never ask themselves before signing any vehicle deal. What do you actually need from a vehicle, and what have you just been convinced you need by marketing departments who specialize in making you feel inadequate about your current transportation? The average person drives less than 40 miles daily and rarely has more than 2 passengers. Yet, somehow, we've been convinced that we need vehicles capable of extensive capabilities we'll rarely or never use. This disconnect between actual requirements and perceived needs is where substantial financial damage occurs. If your primary use for a vehicle is commuting and errands, that luxury SUV with every available feature might be excessive. A reliable, fuel-efficient sedan or compact vehicle could meet your actual needs while saving you hundreds monthly. But admitting that requires acknowledging that maybe you don't need a vehicle capable of things you'll never actually do. Here's something else rarely discussed in these vehicle acquisition conversations. The total cost of ownership extends far beyond your monthly payment, regardless of which option you choose. Insurance costs can vary dramatically between different vehicles, and those differences compound over time. A sporty vehicle that appeals to your sense of adventure might also appeal to your insurance company's desire to charge substantially higher premiums. Luxury vehicles often require premium fuel, specialized maintenance, and replacement parts that cost significantly more. That European luxury sedan might seem like a reasonable lease deal until you discover that routine maintenance costs multiples of what you'd pay for a domestic vehicle. Fuel efficiency becomes increasingly important as energy prices fluctuate. A vehicle getting 20 miles per gallon versus 30 might not seem dramatically different until you calculate the fuel cost difference over several years. The financing landscape has also become more complex, with manufacturers offering everything from 0% financing deals to loan terms extending longer than most undergraduate degrees. That 0% financing sounds incredible until you realize it's only available on vehicles nobody particularly wants to purchase, or it requires forfeiting other incentives that might be more valuable. Extended loan terms can make monthly payments more manageable, but they also mean you'll be paying for the vehicle longer than you might want to keep it. There's something particularly discouraging about making payments on a 7-year-old vehicle that's developed more issues than you anticipated when it was new. So there you have it. Whether you buy, lease, finance, or choose a balloon payment arrangement, the automotive industry has perfected extracting money from you efficiently. The key is understanding total cost, not just the monthly payment that sounds manageable until you realize you'll be making it longer than some employment commitments. Calculate the complete mathematics. Consider your actual requirements versus wants influenced by marketing. Remember that the most attractive deal is usually the one designed to benefit the dealer most. Your future self will appreciate choosing wisely based on thorough analysis instead of impulsively based on how something sounds in the moment.